You've heard of the universe, but have you heard of the multiverse?
This is David Wood of the channel Apologetics Roadshow. I'm wondering who hasn't heard of the multiverse. Is this video supposed to be aimed at 5-year-olds? Even if you are no fan of Marvel, it's hard not to see at least a few trailers for movies that feature the multiverse. And what does this have to do with atheism? Why does David think that his argument will leave me speechless? Let's have a chat. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, and especially to my patrons and channel members. It's no wonder that David Wood has turned to apologetics and YouTube to make a living. With his background of being a convicted felon for hitting his sleeping father in the head with a hammer, getting work in society is difficult. This isn't a criticism of David, but rather of our litigious society that once one has paid their debt to society, fear of being sued if an ex-con, and particularly a violent ex-con, reoffends and harms a customer in the process, the employer is liable for damages. But that's a topic for another day. If that story sounds familiar, yes, David Wood is the guy who made the video about how he is a sociopath and would go around committing murder if his God didn't tell him not to. So by all means, David, please, for all our sakes, keep believing in your God, as you have indicated that you have no moral fabric on your own, and you must borrow what little scraps of rags you can get from the Bible. At least the Bible does say do not murder. The Bible also says that women are to be silent in church. I wonder if David holds to that one. What does David have that he thinks will silence me?
Proponents of the multiverse claim that there's a vast, possibly infinite array of other universes different from our own. The multiverse typically comes up in discussions between theists and atheists.
Really? I'm not sure if I've ever suggested the multiverse could exist in a discussion with a theist. I do consider it a possibility, but on the scale of probability, it's pretty low for me. It's not something I discuss, as I consider it more to be in the realm of science fiction and comic book stories. It's more theoretical than metaphysical. So either I'm not a typical atheist, according to David, as this doesn't even come up in my discussions, or maybe this isn't as common as David claims. Since I likely listen to far more atheists than David does, and I rarely hear this come up, I would suggest that David is overstating the significance of his point.
Discussions about what's called the fine-tuning of the cosmos. Theists point out that the universe is finely tuned for intelligent life. They say that the odds of getting a universe like ours are so staggeringly small, we can't be here by chance.
One would have to consider multiverse to make such a claim. If this is in fact the only universe that has ever been and will ever exist, what are the odds that the universe would be as it is? That is impossible to predict. How did the universe come to be? Could it have been different? Since we can't know these things, we can't know what the odds are of the universe being different. If this is the only universe that is, was, and ever will be, and the universe is as it is, then the odds of the universe being as it is would have to be 100%, as this is the only possible universe. If the theist wants to argue that this universe is fine-tuned, and that the odds of this universe being other than the one we have is some vast great number, then the only possible way to make that claim is to consider the odds of other universes, a multiverse. Thus, it is you, David, that is proposing a multiverse, not me.
Atheists respond by claiming that if there's actually an infinite array of universes, well, it's not so improbable that at least one of them would be capable of supporting intelligent life.
While that is true, David, I would go in the opposite direction. If this is the only universe that can exist, and it is capable of supporting intelligent life, then the odds of the only possible universe sustaining intelligent life is 100%, as the only one that can exist does exist, and it does sustain intelligent life.
In fact, many of them might be capable of supporting intelligent life. With infinity on your side, so much is possible.
True, but with exclusivity as your position, the universe we have would necessarily be the only one possible. If you want to entertain the possibility that the universe could have been other than it is, one dimension otherness could take is for there to be more than one. Thus, to propose the universe could be other than it is to propose the possibility of a multiverse. So pick one, David. Either this is the only possible universe, or many universes are possible. You can't have it both ways.
But wait a moment. Theists have infinity on our side. So if atheists think it's reasonable to appeal to an infinite array of universes to explain the features of our universe, obviously they shouldn't have any objection if theists do the exact same thing.
But what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you are going to abandon your idea that this universe is the only one possible, if you want me to consider that it's possible for the universe to be different, then you are asking me to consider a multiverse either as existing or at least being possible. And I'm willing to do that. But don't then claim that this is my position, as it is you that is asking me to consider it.
What do I mean here? I mean that theists can offer a multiverse response to what's called the problem of evil, or the argument from evil, and that atheists, if they're consistent, can't really object to our multiverse response. Let's see how this works. First, we'll make sure everyone understands the fine-tuning argument. Then we'll cover the multiverse response to the fine-tuning argument. Then we'll make sure everyone understands the problem of evil. And finally, we'll present the multiverse response to the problem of evil. So, fine-tuning. To get the idea here, think about a fish tank. I was about 7 years old, and my friend Todd got a fish tank with a bunch of fish for Christmas. We were using the fish tank thermometer as a torpedo to try to hit the fish, and Todd broke the thermometer. All his fish died in the next few days. Why? Because the tank had to be kept at a specific temperature for the fish to survive. The temperature had to be finely tuned, but not nearly as finely tuned as the universe. The fundamental structure of the universe has to be finely tuned for intelligent life. The forces and constants of physics, certain physical quantities, the ratios between the masses of atomic particles, and the properties of elements and compounds have to be just right, or we wouldn't be here.
The problem with that analogy is it runs opposite of what goes on in the universe. You took life, the fish, and put them in an artificial environment, the tank. You needed to keep the tank conditions uniform to the conditions the fish were able to live in, as what the fish can survive was determined before you moved the fish into the tank. If you want this analogy to work, you would need to claim that fully formed humans were transplanted to this universe from another one. But that isn't your position. Instead, the universe existed and human life developed because human life can be sustained in the universe. For your analogy to fit reality, you would need to set up a fish tank with no thermometer, throw in the building blocks of life, and then wait 1 billion years. Then see what, if any, fish are swimming in the tank. The fish evolved to fit the environment they have. The environment does not adapt to the life within it. You really need to consider the puddle analogy.
A puddle wakes up one morning and thinks, this is a very interesting world I find myself in. It fits me very neatly. In fact, it fits me so neatly, I mean, really precise, isn't it? It must have been made to have me in it.
As much as the puddle feels the universe was designed for it because it fits in the hole that it is in so nicely, it wasn't the hole that was made to fit the puddle, but rather the water took the shape of the hole. Change the hole and the puddle will change shape. What about your fish tank? When you changed the environment, the fish died. But did all of the life in the tank die? Not likely. I would bet that you also got an algae bloom as a result. The algae fit better with the new environment, and now it thrives. This is exactly what we see with evolution. The environment does change: ice ages, floods, deforestation, and so on. As conditions change, what life can be sustained in the new conditions also changes. It's why 99% of the species ever to exist on this planet are extinct. If this world really was fine tuned for life, it wasn't done very well, as most life forms that have existed on this planet are extinct. Additionally, Earth certainly isn't fine tuned for human life. Humans have only existed on the planet for a relatively short time. What's more, 80% of the planet is hostile to human life. We can survive on less than 20% of the planet. If the planet was designed for human life, wouldn't you expect that more of it would in fact be in tune with human needs for life?
Consider some of the forces of nature. Without gravity, there'd be no planets, stars, or galaxies, and I wouldn't even be able to sit in this chair. Without the strong nuclear force, protons and neutrons wouldn't hold together in the nucleus of an atom, and hydrogen would be the only element on the periodic table. Without the electromagnetic force, there'd be no chemical interactions between atoms, and the molecules necessary for life couldn't form.
Okay, now prove that such a universe is possible. Then, when you finish that, prove that another form of life that isn't dependent on those factors is also not possible. The problem with your argument is that it assumes things that we cannot know. Is non carbon based life possible? I have no idea. Just because you don't fit into an altered universe doesn't mean that nothing does. You presuppose that you are the goal of the universe, when in fact you are not. You are the result of a universe that has no goals.
But the fact that we have the necessary forces isn't nearly as surprising as the fine-tuning of the numbers that physicists plug into the laws of nature. These are the constants of physics: the cosmological constant, the gravitational constant, the strong force constant, the fine structure constant. These numbers could have had a wide range of values, and yet the values they actually have fall into the extremely narrow range that make biological life possible.
Support that claim. Prove that these numbers could have a wide range. Could a universe exist without these things? If not, then those numbers could not have a wide range. They could only be what they are in order for the universe to exist. If they could have a wide range, the universe could have been very different than it is. It is also possible that a form of life could have developed in those conditions that those conditions would be friendly to. We don't know and can't know the answers to these questions. You claim knowledge that you do not have to support a claim that is unsupportable.
Part of the reason we're alive is that the universe turned out just right for life.
The universe turned out just right for life, or life in our universe developed because these conditions were just right for the life forms that developed here.
Should we attribute this to chance? Did we just get lucky?
Not in the sense that you mean. If not us, then some other life form would be here in our place. So for each of us personally, yes, we are lucky that the universe is what it is because it allows for our existence. But from the standpoint of other life forms that don't exist because the universe is what it is, take the dinosaurs, for example, the extinct ones, not the current avian ones, the universe is unlucky. Had the meteorite that crash landed on our planet 65 million years ago, leading to their extinction, not happened, they might still be alive today. Same for mammoths. Had the ice age not ended, they might be alive today. So while you can say, wow, it sure is lucky for us that the universe is what it is, they would say the opposite. It sure sucks that the universe is what it is because we can't survive in those conditions. So while the current conditions on Earth are compatible for human life in some places, it might not always be so. Global warming is causing catastrophic changes in weather patterns and the environment. If we get wiped off this planet, will you still claim that it was finely tuned for you? Obviously not, as you would be dead. But there might be a cockroach apologist in that chair 50 million years from now, making the same argument that the conditions on Earth are fine-tuned for it to be the dominant species. Then its God will become the new God of the universe. The point is that you feel lucky now that the conditions are right for your survival, but they might not always be that way. They might not, because there is no God that is fine-tuning the world for you.
Well, suppose a murderous psychopath locks you in a room, puts a gun to your head, and hands you 2 dice. He says, if you roll double sixes, I'll let you live. If you roll anything else, you're dead. Now, roll. So, you roll the dice. Huh! Double sixes. Man, that was lucky. Then he tells you to do it again. Double sixes again, or you're dead. You roll them again. Huh! Double sixes. That was really lucky. But what if it keeps happening? He makes you roll again and again and again, and day after day, year after year, you keep rolling the numbers necessary for life, your life.
The dice are loaded, obviously, but this isn't the case with the universe. Again, 99% of life that ever existed on this planet is extinct, and changes in the universe leading to extinction events don't occur daily. If you want to stick with that analogy but make it more in line with reality, you need to add 1,000,000 other species to the room, and the guy only comes once a year. He chooses one animal to roll the die each year. Your luck comes not from rolling the right number each time, but that you never get chosen to roll the dice. This would be more accurate to the conditions on this planet. But the reality is that we could, at any time, end up rolling the dice. What we are doing to our own environment is causing changes that can kill us. At any time, our luck could, in fact, run out, because there is no God controlling the universe that is going to make sure that we continue to live on this planet. Even your own theology tells you this. It tells you that the earth will be destroyed. It claims that you and your fellow believers will be lifted off and carried to heaven, where you will continue to live. But those left on the planet will all die. Now, I realize that you think they die by their own choice, by not believing in your God, but really, it's all a matter of being lucky. Anyone born in a predominantly Christian region gets saved, but all those born in regions where other faiths are dominant will be destroyed for not believing in the real God that caused them to not believe by causing them to be born where he knew that this would be the result. So are they unlucky to be born in the wrong place, so they end up in the wrong faith? Or was this God's design for them? Was the world fine-tuned for the destruction of those that God chooses for destruction?
Does there ever come a point where you say, come on, the dice are loaded?
Yeah, I already went through that.
If the answer is yes, if there are limits to what can reasonably be described as luck, then we have to believe that someone had us in mind when the universe was created, because the odds of getting a life-permitting universe by chance are a lot worse than rolling double sixes a bunch of times.
Hold on, little tater tot. You seem to have smuggled in a creator here. If you want to claim that there is a creator, you need some support for that, not just your incredulity that the universe works for you, and thus you must have a creator that made it that way for you.
As the late astrophysicist Sir Fred Hoyle said, a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. But atheists have a response. It's the multiverse response.
Not really. I've already gone through my response, and it wasn't the multiverse. This video is supposed to be about the problem of evil. We are halfway through the video, and we haven't even gotten to the topic that you claimed you were addressing. Was this just a clickbait title that I fell for? Are we ever actually going to get to the topic?
If there are a lot of universes, then maybe the odds of getting a life-permitting universe aren't so bad. Think about it. If you're only dealt 5 cards in a hand of poker, and it's the only poker hand you're ever dealt, it would be extremely improbable for you to get a royal flush. But if you're dealt 1,000,000 hands, and one of them is a royal flush, well, that's not improbable at all, because the odds of getting a royal flush when dealt just 5 cards are about 1 in 650,000.
Okay, but again, we don't need lots of universes. We only need lots of chances of life. And we have that in our universe. Right now, Earth is the only planet we know of that has intelligent life. But there are lots of planets in the universe. Many of them are capable of sustaining life. Do they? We don't know. If they do, is life there similar to life on our planet? Again, we don't know. So, how many poker hands were even dealt? We have no idea. How many of those hands could be winning hands? We don't know. One need not get a royal flush to win at poker. Hell, you could win with a single pair. How many hands out there have won the game? We don't know. When we don't have the information to calculate the odds of life on other planets, we can't then claim to know such odds are infinitesimally small. We don't need a multiverse. We need only look at our own universe to see that you claim information that you don't have.
So, while a life-permitting universe may seem extremely improbable given the odds of the laws of nature being just right for life, what happens if there are an infinite number of universes?
Don't know, don't care. It's irrelevant.
If there are an infinite number of universes, each with its own variations in the laws of nature, suddenly it's not as surprising that we hit the jackpot in ours.
Irrelevant. Are we ever going to get to the topic?
Problem solved, right? Not quite. There are all kinds of objections to the multiverse response, but I'm going to ignore all of them.
What? What do you mean by posting a 10-minute video, then spending 6.5 minutes talking about a multiverse that is entirely irrelevant to your point, and then saying you aren't even going to address the topic that you brought up? Okay, fine. It was irrelevant anyway, but please get to the real topic.
Let's just grant that it's perfectly acceptable to appeal to an infinite array of unobserved, undetectable universes to explain certain features of our universe. The point I want to make in this video is that if our atheist friends get to appeal to the multiverse to respond to an argument, it's only fair that we also get to appeal to the multiverse to respond to an argument.
Except you didn't even give any examples of any atheists doing this, now did you? Instead, you just made the claim that atheists do this and then went on as if making this claim actually proves your claim. There probably are some atheists that make claims along this line. I wouldn't refute that. But if that was in fact your topic, you really should examine what the actual claim is by the atheist you are addressing to respond to the point, not just making vague references to atheists say this and then address your own claims and not yours.
Right? That's fair, isn't it, atheists? You don't want to be hypocrites, do you?
You don't want to be a condescending jerk, David, do you?
Thank you for your anticipated consistency. All right, now, the main argument against the existence of God is called the problem of evil, or the argument from evil. Here, evil doesn't just include what we normally think of as evil, namely moral evil. It also includes all kinds of human and animal suffering, what we call natural evil. There are many versions of the argument from evil. The idea, generally, is that if an all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly good being exists, there shouldn't be so much suffering in our world. God could do a better job. Theists often respond to the argument from evil by offering philosophical or theological reasons for God to allow, or sometimes to produce, the bad things we see around us.
Yes, the good old mysterious ways excuse, or the God has some kind of good in mind excuse.
Philosophical reasons for God to allow suffering are called theodicies. Examples of popular theodicies are free will theodicies. God allows us to do evil things because free will is important.
Which fails to address natural evil with no human cause.
And soul-building theodicies. Suffering actually causes us to grow morally and spiritually and to develop virtues like courage and compassion.
Which fails the test for being moral. I mean, if God allows a great evil, such as children suffering and dying from cancer, so that their parents can learn compassion and caring, then your God is a moral monster that fails to understand that to allow great evil in order to bring about a small amount of good is a bad idea. If we put this into the trolley analogy, God pulls the switch to kill 12 people in order to save one, and then calls himself moral as he brought about some good. expecting us to excuse the greater evil that he caused in the process. But go on.
There are dozens of theodicies that are meant to explain various kinds of evil and suffering. Then there are theological explanations, which would be things like human beings have rebelled against God, and at least some of the bad things that happen in this world are the result of that rebellion.
Yep, and again, even this fails to explain natural evil.
Atheists answer these philosophical and theological reasons for suffering by saying, in effect, are these things really so important to God that he has to allow this mess we see around us? Is free will so important to God that he has to allow human trafficking? Is soul building so important to God that we need hurricanes? Is punishing us for rebellion so important to God that animals need to get caught in the crossfire?
Dude, you are asking the wrong question. You really need to listen to the argument to get the question right. If you are addressing the wrong question, you are going to get the answer wrong every time because you aren't addressing the issue. The question isn't how important is this to your God? It's can your God bring about the same result without all this suffering? If the answer is yes, then your God is a moral monster for allowing all this needless suffering. If the answer is no, then why do you claim that your God is all-powerful? I can think of dozens of ways to teach people to be compassionate without having to cause actual suffering. Hell, there are children's books that teach this subject, and no one needs to hurt the children to read the book to them and then discuss how the characters in the book are feeling. I need only appeal to how I feel about something to realize that other people feel the same way. Thus, I learn to feel compassion and empathy. But I forget who I'm talking to here. Dave is a self-proclaimed sociopath.
I'm still a diagnosed psychopath.
He claims to have no feelings of empathy, and thus such lessons are lost on him entirely. But what he claims God does to bring about the good that he claims God wants is also lost on him. He claims the only reason he doesn't murder people is his God told him not to in his holy book.
If something were to happen and you were to stop believing, would you go back to wanting to kill and torture? Would you actually do it?
If I stopped believing in God and Christianity,
Yeah.
would I go back?
And actually do it?
I have to say, I do understand that there might be a difference between an 18-year-old and a 40-some-year-old in terms of what they want to do. If I had to guess, I would say probably yes. I can't
Then
say.
I want you to keep believing.
Not that he learned this through seeing the suffering of others, not that he learned this in any of the manners that he describes his God allegedly allowing evil to occur in to bring about this good, but only because he thinks this God said so. If these lessons of evil are completely lost on you, a believer, how do you not see that they would also be completely lost on an unbeliever? One who looks at the evil world and instead of seeing an inept God that can't do any better, sees the world as devoid of any God even trying. Because the world that we have, and a world where no God is even trying to repress evil, look the same to me.
And then theists would argue that these things really are that important.
To which I would respond with the question, can your God bring about the same result without all the suffering? If your answer is yes, then your God is immoral for allowing needless suffering. And if the answer is no, then your God is inept. Either way, I have no reason to think that you have a good God there. Is this the point where I'm supposed to be speechless? Did I miss my cue?
But I'm not going to go in that direction. I'm just going to do what atheists do.
Whew, good. I didn't miss it. Okay, please, tell me what I do here. I don't think I could figure it out by myself without your help.
I'm going to offer the multiverse response to the problem of evil. I'm simply going to say, what if God created a multiverse? What if God created an infinite array of universes? God certainly has the power to do that. Suppose God created each universe with different features. Perhaps the vast majority of alternative universes are the hedonistic paradises that atheists say God should have made.
Then if life is going to be fine there, I would say that that demonstrates that your God is capable of bringing about what he wants without all the suffering. That would prove that allowing suffering here makes your God a moral monster. Well done, David. You've proven that if your God exists, he's immoral. Problem of evil affirmed.
But in our universe, God did things a little differently. He gave people a great deal of free will. He made a place where lots of things go wrong so that people can develop virtues like courage and compassion. He punished rebellion.
Assuming there is a multiverse and your God made them all, of course this is possible. But that doesn't address the question, is life better in this one, or is it better in the paradise universes where there is no suffering? Would people really fail to be compassionate or courageous in a universe with no suffering? Until you can show that such virtues cannot exist in such a universe, you have no point. More importantly, even if suffering is needed for those to exist, does your God win a cost-benefit analysis? Could God not achieve the same result with maybe 1% less suffering? And now I'm going to pull an Abraham on you. Could your God achieve the same result with 5% less suffering, 10%, 20%? If he can, then your God is evil for allowing more suffering than was necessary to achieve his goals. If the answer is no, then your God isn't all-powerful. I, with my finite human mind, can come up with ways to achieve this result with considerably less suffering. If I can do it, your omniscient God should be able to do it too. For example, guinea worms. If God created these horrible creatures, he made a bad design. If they are the result of the curse, then your God was malicious in making this curse, as he made a creature that eats children's eyes from the inside out. In 1986, guinea worm disease affected 3.5 million people a year. But thanks to the efforts of former President Jimmy Carter, this disease has nearly been eradicated. Last year, it is estimated that there were 13 cases. The disease has been eradicated in 17 countries. You could make the argument, look what virtue President Carter displayed because of this worm. But President Carter was a virtuous man regardless of the worms. They are not the cause of his altruism. They are just the object that got his attention. And even if they were in fact the cause, this is not a good reason to allow so much suffering. Think of the millions of people that suffered and died for centuries just so Jimmy Carter could display this virtue? Seriously, dude. The one causing the harm isn't the hero of the story. It's the one that solves the problem that is the hero. Finally, why are you so arrogant as to think that this universe is about you? Suffering existed in this world long before humans existed. If the whole point of suffering is to teach lessons to humans, what was the purpose before humans existed? This world would be just fine without our species on the planet. If the whole point of suffering, not just human suffering, but all suffering, is to teach lessons to humans, and humans are incapable of learning these lessons without the existence of evil, or even the existence of less evil, it would seem to me that the moral thing to do would be to not make humans, or, at the very least, to make humans differently. If your God is omniscient and omnipotent, could he not just make a version of humanity that can learn virtue without suffering, or at least with less suffering? And again, if not, then your God isn't all-powerful as you claim he is.
Can you really say that God couldn't do this in just one of the infinite universes he created?
No, but if he can make universes with less suffering, but chooses not to, then he is immoral. If you want to claim that one with the greater suffering is the best universe to live in, then support that claim. Demonstrate that compassion and courage don't exist on those other universes, and that life is somehow worse because of it. Let's analyze David's alleged points. If a multiverse is possible, God could make different levels of suffering in different universes. God allows more suffering in this universe than others because it causes people to be more virtuous. Therefore what? Evil is good because it causes virtue? You didn't solve the problem of evil. You just claimed that evil is a good thing. You have redefined evil as the cause of virtue. If this was true, we should all practice evil in order to bring about more virtue. Your own Bible addresses this issue head on. Should we all sin so grace may abound? May it never be. If your God is causing evil so virtue or grace can abound, then your God is violating his own directive.
This is one of those times when we must face the ramifications of the Prime Directive.
On what basis can you say that he couldn't?
I didn't. On what basis do you claim that I did?
Your feelings? Why should your feelings about the multiverse response to the problem of evil bother us any more than our feelings about the multiverse response to cosmic fine-tuning bother you?
My feelings? How did my feelings ever even enter this discussion? Not only is that not my response, for you to presume that it would be my response is really arrogant. If you had at least asked a single atheist and gotten this response, you might have a point. But you make no indication of ever having done so. Maybe this is the part where I'm supposed to be speechless, as his argument has devolved into a non sequitur. I have no idea where my feelings fits into his claims. My feelings about what? What is moral? How much is an acceptable level of suffering? What is the best method for teaching virtue? These aren't based on my feelings, so, ugh. You know what? I will admit I didn't see this coming. I thought he was going to make a mediocre argument, then declare it to be so good that it leaves the atheist speechless. But no, he went an entirely different direction. He made an argument that is so completely incoherent and then says, "Look, left you speechless, didn't I? You can't answer me because I didn't actually make a point, now did I?" Is that it, David? The way to silence an atheist is to make an argument to her that has no point and demonstrates nothing? If so, congratulations, you did it. Thank you for demonstrating to us all that you can make a pointless 10-minute video supporting absolutely nothing. Good waste of time there.
Or are you going to say that there's something really, really weird about appealing to an infinite array of unobservable, undetectable alternative universes to explain away the features of the one we actually observe?
Ah, that's the problem. David missed the point of the multiverse argument. Since it's not one that I make, I'm not going to defend it here. What I do want to point out is the irony of him complaining that atheists analogize to something unobservable and undetectable to make a point about the real universe when he appeals to a God that is unobservable and undetectable to explain away the universe that we actually observe.
Too late to say that now. The problem of evil has been defeated. All thanks to the multiverse.
Wait, where? When? You haven't answered the questions. Could your God have made a world with less suffering? And if so, why didn't he? You just claim that without it we don't get virtue. Yet you failed to demonstrate that to be the case. Furthermore, you failed to demonstrate that even if suffering is needed for virtue to exist, do we need this level of suffering? And of course, the ultimate question of, if this level of suffering must exist for humans to be virtuous, would it not be the better moral choice to not make humans at all? You've answered nothing, made no point, and then just declare victory.
To declare victory before battle.
I don't make the rules, atheists. I just enforce them.
You do? Are you God now? Did David just replace his God? I hope not. He needs his God. Keep believing in your God, David, to reduce the suffering of the rest of us. But maybe hold off on making videos about your God until you actually have something to say. To the vast majority out there, those of us capable of being empathetic, courageous, and virtuous without a God, just live your life. This week, fresh hot chocolate chip granny cookies go to Tarek Al-Kassab, I hope I pronounced that correctly, and Data Jack. Live your life.